Well, yes, you're right. I'm Australian, and I grew up in Australia, and where I lived was Tamborine Mountain, which is halfway down the eastern coast, and it's subtropical rainforest. So it's hot and green, and big thunderstorms in summer. But as a child, I used to love to read, and I would just disappear inside the world of my books. And the books that I were reading were often Enid Blyton or The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, books that were set in England. And so I have a love for both of those settings. One was my geographical landscape, and the other was the landscape of my imagination. So for whatever reason, when it came time for me to sit down and start writing, it didn't even occur to me. I didn't want to write about my everyday world. I wanted to sort of slip down the rabbit hole and go somewhere else. A great question. I'll do that one first. I would love to live in a house with hundreds and hundreds of years of history. That would be wonderful. It could be with a beautiful garden and a little pokey attic, and stairs that go underground, and lots of little twists and turns. I would absolutely love that. I don't live in a house that old yet, but I'll keep working on it, and maybe one day. But yes, I love houses. I love them architecturally and aesthetically as a person, but as a writer, my favorite thing about them is that they're repositories of memory, that you can sort of create this place in which all of these lives have been led, and for me as a writer, that's something very inspirational and about that. So certainly in my most recent book, the house, Birchwood Manor, actually becomes a character in the story, and because of that we are privy to all of these different lives and stories that tie together to solve the mystery at the end. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure there would be so many examples, and you're right. Along with houses, time is one of my obsessions as a writer, but also as a person. I love history. I love reading about history, but more than anything, I love that sense of connection, the idea that the past and the present are tethered together. And I think place is a really good example for where you can see that, I can't walk down a cobbled lane without imagining how it must have looked by gaslight, or when you could hear old wagon wheels sort of, bumping over the cobblestones, and I just love that feeling. And I think where it came from in my own life is when I was growing up, my mother was an antique dealer, so she had a shop. And so our lives were filled with interesting old objects, some of them beautiful or valuable, but it's not even those necessarily that excite me. For me, it's the ones that do seem to tell a story. For instance, an old coat where you put your hand into the pocket and pull out, a loose button, something that the person who had owned it at some previous time has kept, perhaps to stitch back on, or a ticket stub inside an old book, or even, one of my favorite things with secondhand books is when you open them and somebody from the past has annotated and written it out, and to somebody with all of my love, special message, 1862. Oh, I absolutely love that. Yeah. No, I wasn't, not even for a second, because for me, when I sit down to write a book, the most important thing to me is that the story that I build is authentic. And so if it feels right to me, I trust that will be conveyed in some way. And you're right, all of my books have metaphorical ghosts in them, but with Clockmaker's Daughter, for the first time, that tipped out of metaphor. And but I say that as somebody who doesn't particularly read supernatural books myself, but she just felt right. And I think it's because I'm always telling stories that are set partly in the past and partly in the present, I'm always looking for new ways to illustrate that link within the book. And the character, Bertie Bell, who narrates a large part of the story, gave me such an incredible opportunity to have somebody who has been witness to 1862 and the present day, and within the one house, all of these other little snapshots of lives that have taken place within that one building. And so I loved writing her, and I really missed her when I finished.